Welcome, everybody, to this episode of The Monthly Blend, a monthly video podcast brought to you by Next, powered by Shulman Rogers and the Big Idea Connectpreneur community. I'm Tien Wong, founder and host of the Big Idea Connectpreneur community, which is a global community of over 25,000 investors, founders, business leaders from around the world. I'm also CEO of Opus 8, which helps companies and alternative investment managers raise money through our network of over 3,000 accredited private investors, angels, and family offices throughout the US. Along with my co-host, Anthony Millen, who is the founder and chair of Next, powered by Shulman Rogers, we are pleased to bring to you this monthly video podcast, which will cover trends, information, and interesting research and tidbits, as well as fascinating interviews with game changers and newsmakers here in the Washington, D.C., Baltimore Metroplex. Anthony and I started this podcast about 14 months ago as a way to increase awareness of cool, innovative happenings in our region, to break down silos, and to serve as a mechanism to do our part in helping to bring together the region and to help foster innovation and entrepreneurship here. Today, we're absolutely thrilled to have a conversation with one of the DC region's top entrepreneurs, Jeff Grass, who has founded and served as CEO of 3 successful companies, all in the DMV region. Jeff is also on the board of visitors of his alma mater, James Madison University, and he has done much philanthropic work, especially during the pandemic through Hungry, which is his current company, which has addressed food insecurity issues here in our region. I'd love to give Jeff the opportunity to self-introduce a little more fully. Jeff, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Tien, Anthony. I appreciate being here. It's a real honor. So I am from the DC area, as you mentioned, the Northern Virginia side of the DC area. As you mentioned, I've started and co-founded and led 3 different businesses, all started and operated out of Arlington, Virginia. Live Safe, Buy Safe, and Hungry. Hungry, we started about 5.5 years ago as a platform designed to connect companies with top local chefs and restaurants to provide, a range of different types of food and event solutions, primarily think kind of office catering events, things along those lines. And it's a business that has really grown and adapted, with the pandemic. And as we seem to be coming out the other side of that, and really excited about where we are and where we're going.
Terrific. That was great, Jeff. Thank you. And now I'd like to turn things over to my co-host, Anthony Millen, who is a serial entrepreneur. Anthony is also a venture capitalist with a national VC fund, and he's also one of the nation's leading startup attorneys. Anthony is the founder and chair of Next, powered by Shulman Rogers. And Next is disrupting the way legal services are being delivered with a unique fixed price structure, which is highly attractive to early stage companies. I'd also like to congratulate Anthony on his firm being selected as the Startup Law Firm of the Year by Legal Week last year. Anthony, turn it over to you.
Thanks, Tien and Jeff. It's great to have you with us today. Jeff, as you mentioned, you've built and run 3 successful companies in the region over the last 15 to 20 years. And it would be really interesting as an entrepreneur who's been through a number of cycles within this region, just your perspective about changes that you've seen, progress that's been made, and just the overall state of the entrepreneurial environment in the DMV since you started your first company.
Sure. Yeah, it was about 20 years ago now. And I'd say, what I've observed is the DC region has focus on entrepreneurship has become, much, much more significant, really at all levels. I think there's a lot more entrepreneurs. I think there's a much more substantial angel, community they're investing in promising, startups and companies. I also think the governmental institutions, in the DMV are also much more in tune with startups, much more supportive of startups. And so it feels like as a region, we've really come to realize, I think, the strength and the power of economic development that, startups bring to the table. And so it's nice to see it really growing and flourishing. Each of those sort of build on themselves, right? So more entrepreneurs starting great, companies with good ideas helps, attract, more angel investors, helping fund, businesses, getting them going. And so it's really been nice to kind of see the progression over the last 20 years or so.
And in terms of just the support that's out there, we've seen a lot of growth in accelerators in the area, and it does seem compared to when you started 20 years ago and kind of looked around, that there seems to be a lot more supporting infrastructure that's coming into place that probably helps companies de-risk a little faster and get going a little bit faster?
Yeah, I very much think so. I think the ecosystem around it, whether it's legal services or accounting services, I think there's just a lot more, whether it's service providers or others, that are more focused on the startup ecosystem and ways to support it, kind of meet their needs a little bit better. So yeah, and I think networking and collaboration across entrepreneurs, the Mindshare network here in the DC area was something that I was part of relatively early on. It's gotten so much bigger and more substantial. But I think even outside of that, there's more opportunities, it seems, for connection and collaboration, even despite the pandemic, which I think has probably made things like collaboration a little bit more challenging. It feels like there's just a lot more opportunities to find those connections. Tien's helping, all the time with his organization as an example.
Absolutely. No, the Connectpreneur event and other things that Tien is involved in definitely play a big role in bringing people and connecting people in the region. I agree. 100%. In terms of kind of looking forward a few years, what are some of the things that you think we could do, or groundwork that could be laid to make the ecosystem even stronger? What are some areas that you think we should be focusing on as a region to continue this momentum moving forward?
Yeah, I think a relative weakness that we have here in the DC area versus some of the other markets is I do think we are underserved from a venture capital perspective. Kind of the venture fund, private equity community. For whatever reason, we just don't seem to have nearly the number and size and capacity, for kind of A, B, C, kind of series investments. There's obviously some venture funds here and some great ones, but it's nothing like you see on the West Coast or some of the other markets, New York and other places. So I'd say if there's any single gap that I notice, it seems like that's really it. I'm not sure exactly how to solve for that. I think, like CIT Gap Funds, which is an investment fund on the Virginia side, and DC and Maryland, I think, have similar kinds of things, have done a good job of helping, provide, more at that seed stage. But that next stage up, I think, is still a little bit of a gap for us.
And in terms of we kind of talk broader market, in terms of the areas that you're more focused in, how have you seen the food tech related space evolving in our region, and kind of where does that fit into the overall evolution of that particular space in the country?
Yeah, there's really across the country, there's a lot of innovation in food happening right now on so many different dimensions. Obviously there's been a lot of innovation on the restaurant tech side with, some of it, was sort of pandemic driven, a lot of the plant-based meats and other types of things. I think, Americans are sort of waking up to how important their diet is, and what they put in their bodies is just as important as any other medicine that they might be trying to take. And so you're seeing just a lot of innovation on all different levels of the food ecosystem. DC has I think it's underappreciated, but we really do have, quite a lot of innovation from a food tech perspective and a food perspective. Obviously, Jose Andres, whose Think Food Group is located here, and Sweet Green and others. Hungry, we are increasingly, I think, becoming a real force to be reckoned with in the business food and catering world. Not just here in DC, but kind of we're now in 12 different major cities across the country and kind of growing quickly. But I do think, we are underappreciated versus whether it's cybersecurity or ed tech or some of the biotech sciences up in the Maryland area. And obviously all things defense related, the DC area is really strong. And with Amazon coming, obviously there's another sort of strong driver on the tech front. But I do think food tech's a real game changer, for the DC community.
Again, you've been in this for a long time, so you've been through cycles, and there are a lot of early stage entrepreneurs who've only seen the markets move in one direction for long periods of time.
Yeah.
And, one of the things I think would be interested just for you to share is advice to entrepreneurs in a more challenging kind of environment. What are some of the key things that you would, having been through cycles and had experiences, if you were going to give some guidance to entrepreneurs who haven't had that experience under their belt yet, what are the things that they should be focusing on as the waters get a little rougher around us, both with global and financial market changes that are going on right now?
Yeah, there's obviously been a lot of changes in the market, which flows backwards through the venture ecosystem, right? So if the markets reprice, multiples and things on companies, that tends to flow backwards. I lived through that. My first company was actually based in California, and we lived through the up and the down of the .com bubble, and some of what you're seeing in the market today reminds me of just how dramatic and significant some of the changes were. It doesn't feel quite the same though, right? Like we weren't in an economy where there was such an intense for the years after the job market was very different than we're seeing today, for example. But I think it's fair to say though, advice to entrepreneurs, and we've been thinking a lot about this too, is I would very much, if you were sort of focused on growth, and it's all about growth, it's really about kind of temper that with really getting back to basics around good fundamentals. So making sure, we've always tried to have a philosophy. We want to control our own destiny here at Hungry. So we never want to put ourselves in a position where, we could be going 100 miles an hour at a brick wall, and as long as we raise money, we'll be fine. Is a scary place to be when the markets are tightening and you're just not sure, right? So trying to manage your business in a way that maybe you're tempering a little bit of the focus on growth, which is what was being rewarded over the last number of years. Growth, even if it didn't have margin attached to it or solid sort of business fundamentals. I think it's really about kind of making sure you've got healthy margins, you've got kind of good stories, you've got good CAC payback periods, you've got the things that investors are going to look for. The positive is there's still a lot of money in venture funds and private equity funds that are looking to be deployed. So I think it's really going to be a flight to quality, and I think you'll see more discerning investors. I think you'll see much less lofty valuations for a period of time. And so how do you manage to that and recalibrate your business? I would say is what most entrepreneurs that are running venture-backed businesses should be thinking about right now. I don't think it's run for the hills and start, laying off people, but I would definitely kind of calibrate, a little bit differently.
Great. Now, that is great advice to entrepreneurs who are trying to figure out exactly what they should be focusing on and where they should be directing their attention. So thank you.
Sure.
We're going to go now kind of from a more macro DC to a little bit more detail on Hungry, and I'm going to turn it back to Tien for that.
Great. Thank you, Anthony. And thank you, Jeff. Jeff, why don't you give our viewers a little sense of what is Hungry? What do you guys do? Who do you serve?
Sure. So we are very much a food tech marketplace. We serve primarily corporate clients. So corporate America that's looking to engage their teams or their clients with food, or other kinds of events. We do, really amazing virtual experiences now that was really developed during the pandemic. And then all kinds of sort of on-site, food and event services, catering and events and like that. So it's a really cool platform that leverages, great local chefs. So it helps kind of foster chef entrepreneurship and support, local businesses, local entrepreneurs. We really kind of focus, heavily on providing a very differentiated service for our clients. It's far more reliable, provides, much higher levels of service, really hits at a lot of the pain points you typically find in trying to bring food to an office. And so we haven't had many people doing that, in a while. So it's, now that we're seeing it start to happen again, it's really about, trying to be out in front and a real leader in that space. No,
you certainly are. And we would highly recommend Hungry services. I've had the the great fortune of having participated in a few of your awesome experiences, both with celebrity chefs as well as the great food that you guys serve. So for those of you listening, yeah, please reach out to Hungry. They do a great job. So I love the advice you gave to Anthony's last question for entrepreneurs that are going through a hard time. I mean, you guys have faced unbelievable adversity in the last 2 years and figured out a way to pivot. If you could just share for a few minutes, sort of like what your initial business model was, and then bang, the pandemic hit, offices closed, your market disappeared. How did you guys go about thinking through the pivot into these 3 new successful, maybe it's 4 businesses you guys are doing now, right?
Yeah, we just added a 4th with an acquisition, but COVID was not kind to anybody in the catering and events world. Back in March 2020, we had literally millions of dollars of sales evaporate over a 3-week period. And, we went from sort of growing super fast to, virtually nothing. And that was real gut check time, for everybody in our industry. And, conventional wisdom was fire and furlough as fast as you can, conserve capital. You don't know how long this is going to last, build back later. And we focus a lot on team and culture and environment here, put a real premium on our people, and also on the chef networks that we have and the support. And we really felt like slash and burn, there's got to be a different way. And so we kind of chose a different path, which was let's innovate our way through it, and really focused on what were the core advantages and capabilities of the platform we created, and how would they be relevant in a pandemic ridden world. And we tried a lot of things very, very quickly, so I can't say it was a lot of long strategic planning, but 2 of those businesses that we launched quickly have really grown and blossomed. One is this virtual experience business that we touched on. Another is using a lot of our operational capabilities around delivery, logistics to create a last mile food delivery business. Has really grown substantially. Initially was very centered on supporting seniors and others in need of getting food to their homes during the pandemic. It has really sort of migrated to a great last mile solution for prepared meal companies, online grocers, organizations that are trying to get food to customers in their homes. And so it's really, I'd say, a testament to the team we have. We had people doing superhuman feats left and right, for a year or 2, really helping us launch and scale these businesses so quickly. We tripled sales over the last 2 years, despite the core business going virtually to zero and being other than more recently largely in a state of suspended animation. But the nice thing is that part of the business is really now coming back strong, and so we're getting each of those 3 core businesses really as engines of growth for the business. And then we just recently acquired a company called NatureBox, which is a healthy snacks company, to broaden the suite of solutions we have for our corporate clients, both at home and in the office.
Absolutely brilliant. And, like I've told you before, you really are one of my heroes in the region, because not just you're just a great entrepreneur who does great things, and you're also a great guy, but also you give back. And I mean, if you could just take a few minutes and explain a little bit about the charitable work that Hungry did during the pandemic, while you guys are getting all kinds of heat from your customers and your investors and trying to pivot into 3 new businesses, you're still finding time and money and resource to give back to the community. Can you talk a little bit about some of the meals that you guys made and delivered for thousands of people?
Sure. There's a bunch of different avenues. One was, we're blessed to have a number of celebrity investors here at Hungry. So folks like Jay-Z and Kevin Hart and Chef Tom Colicchio. So a lot of our celebrity investors really, took the initiative and said, hey, will you guys make meals, that I can send to people in need, lots of times in kind of the towns they're in or where they're from. That inspired us to then, start a partner with a local nonprofit to raise funds to provide meals to a lot of our frontline heroes, doctors, nurses, first responders and their families. So again, it was a way for us to provide an income stream to our chefs who could still be making meals, yet really help those that were in great need. We also we're able to plug in with some pandemic relief efforts to provide our logistics services that grew quickly into delivering 1.5 million meals a month to low-income seniors across all the 5 boroughs of New York City, to seniors in the Bay Area, like cities all across the country we were launching and helping operate. And then, around this time last year, maybe a little earlier, like February, March timeframe, we did things like, gave away 6,000 meals here in DC in an effort to try to raise awareness on a lot of the food insecurity challenges we have in this country. The pandemic has really been hard. Some of the government support helped, but now in food inflation, other things are really, kind of hitting hard again. And so just trying to raise awareness and do our part, which has always been kind of core to who we are since the very beginning of the business.
No, I mean, you and Jose are doing amazing things. We're so proud that you guys are local guys and having a global impact. So that's great. Another question I have back to business is, look, we have this huge war for talent, right? You guys are doubling, tripling your growth. Your core business, original core business is coming back. You guys are buying companies. Obviously, there's a war for great talent, right? I mean, I think there's a great resignation. There's probably not a war for talent, but for great talent, definitely. What are you guys doing in terms of anything special or creative? And what advice would you give to other entrepreneurs who are facing the same problems, trying to find really great people?
Yeah. Well, other than, of course, provide free lunches to your team, right?
That would help.
I'm joking. Although we do see that's significant in terms of getting people in and engaged. But I think for us, it's really 2 things. And it may be just kind of a reminder of sort of back to basics. So one is try to provide a really amazing environment that people want to be a part of. I talked a little bit about the what we are, but the who we are is a very purpose-driven company. Our core purpose is to improve the lives of everyone we touch, the chefs who are partners, the clients we serve, in the communities where we operate, and provide a great environment for our team. And so we've tried to be very intentional and thoughtful around culture and environment. We have 9 core values that we very much live by. You can see them on kind of the sign on the wall behind me here. And if when you provide a great environment, I think people don't want to leave as much, so that helps in the war for talent, right? As you're not trying to replace people who are leaving, but it also provides a great place people want to be a part of. And there's a million other elements to that, but I'd say that is a key piece. The other is something I didn't do in my other businesses, which was to bring on staff full-time recruiters. We always used to leverage third-party recruiters or just trying to network through the local community. I think it's just hard these days to rely on outsiders. We actually now have 3 full-time recruiters that helps us get a much broader pool of candidates. It's helped us with our DEI efforts as well, as to make sure we always have a diverse pool of candidates for every role. And I have found that it helps you attract much higher quality, better fit candidates. And so I'd say that is one small piece of advice to entrepreneurs. You always think, I'm not sure I can afford that, but it absolutely is paying dividends big time. And in a tight job market, I think it makes all kinds of sense.
Yeah, I mean, I learned that lesson the hard way. I mean, for years and years and years, I resisted paying people, like getting that premium person at a premium price. And then the first one I hired paid for, he was like 8 to 10x their salary. So I was like, my God, this is like an investment. And that's when the light bulb went on. I was a lot younger at the time, but really it's an investment, truly.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah. Pay for talent, right? And because it usually pays dividends.
Absolutely. I have a couple of other questions about the business. So
Sure.
What do you think is your, there's a lot going on, but what are your greatest challenges right now? Is there anything keeping you up at night?
I think, will COVID come back in a way that forces everybody back to their homes all the time is probably, I'm scarred from that for the last 2 years. I choose to believe we've, as a society, have kind of moved on and are kind of ready to live with it. But as they say, is the virus done with us yet? So I'd say that's still a concern. That if anything keeps me up at night, it's that. Our business is also, very much exposed to the food inflation challenges. The cost of food's up, 10, 12% in just the last year alone. The labor, challenges, both tight market as well as just cost of labor going up quite a bit. Cost of gas. We're a business that owns the delivery and logistics, whether it's last mile or our core business. So all of those sort of big high dollar, high percentage, changes in sort of inflationary areas are things that we're having to kind of manage through. I think we can manage through all of those, like compared to COVID, like no problem. But I do think every business, is facing those same headwinds and those challenges, and how do you navigate that appropriately? And so, we're certainly not immune to that either.
Yeah, no. And what about, you said you made an acquisition recently to offer, another product offering to your clients. Are you guys looking to continue making strategic acquisitions? And if so, what kinds?
Yeah. The rationale around NatureBox was we were finding that clients, as they're starting to, move forward with their return to office plans, are looking for, one partner that can kind of, do it all for them. So, we'd like to leverage you for your help with snacks, help us do events, with our lunches, with our meetings. And so, being the kind of the full service platform, really, we're finding is viable. So that was part of what drove the rationale for it. At this point, the strategy is more organic growth. We see tremendous growth opportunities in all of the various lines of business that we have, each of the different products that we have. I can't say we wouldn't be open to an acquisition that that makes sense, especially one that's in line with our core business. But at this point, Tien, the primary focus is on organic growth, really scaling the business. The goal is to really be in a position to go public in the next 2 years. So that's really what we've got our heads down and kind of grinding for.
Got it. No, that's awesome. A great ambition. We're pulling for you guys and rooting for you all the way. With that, I think we're pretty much out of time. I'd love to thank you so much, Jeff, for joining us. And let me turn it over to Anthony for some final thoughts.
Thank you, Tien. And Jeff, thank you so much for joining us, for sharing insights into the ecosystem locally and helping us understand a little bit more about Hungry and the journey you've been on and the successes. And on behalf of the ecosystem here, we want to thank you for your leadership. Every ecosystem like this needs role models, and you certainly are, both in terms of what you've built and are building, but what you give back. And we wish you the best of luck. And thanks again for joining us today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, Anthony, Tien. Really a pleasure to be here.